In section 6, we're talking about the chemical nature of the gene. And so we'll start out with the Watson-Crick model of nucleic acids. We'll talk about DNA replication, mutations, control of protein synthesis, structural and regulatory genes, transformation, and viruses. So let's look at a little more detail about each of these units. In the Watson-Crick model of nucleic acids, we'll talk about discoveries before Watson and Crick and then what they came up with and the significance of each of those. In the DNA replication unit, we'll talk about DNA as a blueprint and how each strand of DNA is a template for making new strands, the actual process of replication, and the end product. We'll talk about mutations, what they are, what causes them, and what types they are. When we get to the control of protein synthesis, we'll talk about genes and protein synthesis, which is making the actual proteins, and we'll talk about transcription and translation in turn. When we get to structural and regulatory genes, we'll talk about types of genes and proteins, structural genes and proteins, and then regulatory genes and proteins. And then in our unit on transformation, we'll talk about bacterial genes, transduction, and transformation. And then with viruses, we'll talk about whether they're alive or not, what their structure is all about, and how they work.